Hello, everyone, and welcome to Scream Scene, the horror movie podcast where we watch every horror movie ever made in chronological order, and then we rank them from best to worst. My name's Ben.
And I'm Sarah.
Thank you all for listening to us today. How are you doing, Sarah?
Doing all right. It's about to be a very momentous week for me at work. We are finally launching our annual magazine. I have been involved more with what the post-launch promotion and activation stuff will be, but my colleague has worked on this and been the editor of it for 6 months, 9 months.
A lot of work.
So it's kind of like the marketing thing that my team does every year. So big week coming up. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. I have a lot of exciting stuff happening in the future at my work, but right now is kind of like a quieter month where I'm just going to be doing a lot of the work to ensure that that exciting future stuff happens. So yeah, doing all right.
Nice. The calm before the storm, as they say.
Yeah. Whereas you're
the
like,
storm is right about to hit.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if storms have anything to do with tonight's movie, but why don't you tell us what we're watching today?
Sarah, today we are watching The Damned, also known as These Are the Damned, directed by Joseph Losey.
You know, seeing his name, I wasn't sure if it was Losey.
So it's like
you lose.
I have to remember how to pronounce it when I look at it, because I keep wanting to say like Losey or Losey.
Hopefully he's not lousy.
Right, exactly. So this is a Hammer film production, and it is based on a novel, but I have never heard of this novel before. And I'll admit that like I had not heard of this movie really until we started doing Scream Scene, which apparently is like a huge blind spot, because apparently it's something, but it also kind of makes sense that I haven't heard of it. I'll explain more later, but first, why don't you tell us a bit more about this novel?
So this novel is called The Children of Light. It was published in 1960, and it was written by H.L. Lawrence, also known as Henry Lionel Lawrence. And if neither of those nouns sound familiar, that's because really the only notable thing about Lawrence or his novel is that it gets adapted into The Damned. I did as much research as I could, but most of this is coming from one particular source. So I just want to call out Murray Ewing of musings.co.uk. Seems to be a pretty extensive blog post site reviewing different movies, different books. And in the case of this blog post, it was published in February of 2022. So pretty recent. And they give pretty much the only comprehensive source about H.L. Lawrence and his novel.
Wow. You know, there are a lot of books that people say, oh, this would have been forgotten if it hadn't been turned like into a popular movie. Stuff like Phantom of the Opera is a really good example. But, you know, the corollary of that is usually people then remember the book, and here it seems to have just like the book seems to have dropped off the cultural radar. Yeah.
Now there were some things that I did verify, so it's not just like going off of the word of someone online.
Sure.
So most of this I was able to verify because I was double checking what they were finding rather than trying to do original research.
You peer reviewed.
Sure. So Henry Lionel Lawrence was born in 1908 in London to parents who worked in the theatre. So they traveled a lot across the UK, probably across the continent, kind of established themselves, especially for his schooling in Northern England. Lawrence would write here and there. It seems like he started working as an ad copywriter in the 1930s. He served in the Royal Air Force in World War II. And after the war, he returned to his copywriting at a London ad agency. His first novel is this one, Children of Light, in 1960, and followed that up in 1961 with a second novel, The Sparta Medallion.
So this is a fairly recent novel when they turned it into a movie.
Yeah. I think you'll recognize why.
Sure.
In a little bit. So Lawrence, he's pretty obscure. His only major claim to fame, as I said, is that Children of Light is adapted to The Damned. Murray Ewing mentions a 1979 biographical snippet that says that Lawrence was a member of the Crime Writers Association and the Screenwriters Guild, but otherwise it doesn't really look like Lawrence published anything after that second novel.
Oh.
So with no other notable credits, it seems like between Ewing and some other people who were writing about Lawrence in very, very brief snippets, the general sense seems to be that he focused in on his career as a copywriter and writing for that, rather than following a author career.
Sure. The guy at the ad agency with the screenplay in his desk drawer kind of vibes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the other thing too. With him being part of the Screenwriters Guild, I don't know if he would have joined that as part of Children of Light getting adapted, or if he was like, oh, this is getting adapted, I should join this guild and maybe get to supply other things. But there's not really much about him. As far as the novel, as I said, it was published in 1960, and it follows a man named Simon Largewell, or it could be Largwell.
Sure.
Sometimes names are challenging.
Right.
Simon is on the run for manslaughter, and he heads to the English coast to try to hide out. The manslaughter is for killing his wife.
Oh, jeez.
She tried to kill him. They struggled. He stabbed her back with the scissors, and so he ran, but she stayed alive long enough to tell the police, it was my husband. Anyways, so on the run, he meets a gang of teens/young adults. They are ne'er-do-wells. They are led by a young man named Caesar, or at least he calls himself Caesar. The gang themselves call themselves the Borgias, and they all have pseudonyms based off of Shakespeare characters.
Okay. These are some very literate bikers.
I didn't say they were bikers.
Oh, okay.
They're just ne'er-do-wells.
Okay.
So they beat up Simon, they steal his stuff. As Simon tries to get away, Caesar's half-sister, Joan, sees this as a good opportunity for her to get out of the gang and away. So she joins up with Simon to get out. Now, Caesar doesn't like this. He wants Joan dead because what if she talks to the police? She knows everything. So he's like, no, Joan's got to go. No leaks to the police. So he starts to pursue Joan and Simon. Simon and Joan, because they're, again, now on the run, they come across this military restricted area. It's apparently like this minefield. And so they go into it to try to escape from Caesar. And as they head in, they fall into a pit and discover a group of young children. There's like 12, 14 here. Now, Simon broke his arm in the fall, and the children start to take care of him, which is really surprising because they seem to have a lot of knowledge of like medicine and other sciences, agricultural sciences, knowledge of literature, and much more. They seem to have like a lot more learning to them than what would appear for their age. Now, these children, we learn, they were born from women who had been exposed to radiation, making them immune.
Okay. That's probably not how that works, but all right, I'll give it to them. If radiation can, make Bruce Banner into the Incredible Hulk, I'll give it this.
Now, their only contact with the outside are government doctors through television screens. Now, these kids, along with being mutated to be immune to radiation, it also turns them all blonde and a little weird looking. Like not like mutated, like mutant, just like off-putting.
The kids in Village of the Damned.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. We begin to learn a bit more about this military project. It's called Project Mannequin, and it's run by a Dr. Bernard. And we learned that just based off of the testing that has been done with atomic materials, there's enough radiation in the world and radioactive material in the atmosphere that shows that mankind is going to be sterile in a few years, like maybe decades at the most.
Mm-hmm.
And this military project is basically to prepare the generation that will inherit the Earth.
So these kids are immune to radiation, so they're not sterile.
Correct.
So what we got to do is actually just irradiate everyone to make more radiation-proof kids.
No, it's a fluke that these guys...
Oh, okay. Got it.
Yeah, because everyone is irradiated.
Yeah.
We're going to be sterile. We're going to die out.
Got it. So
it's going to cause mass panic once people find out. And these children are secret, so other governments don't try to interfere with what they're being taught. It's basically the British government's going to have like a monopoly on what these kids are taught, and therefore what the next generation is going to be implementing.
Got it.
Now, it's not good that Simon and Joan have discovered this, so there is a government cover-up to be like, oh, they blew up because it was a minefield.
Mm-hmm.
But Caesar knows that it's a cover-up because he saw that they went in.
Got it.
He doesn't know exactly what's going on behind this fence, but he's like, no, they didn't die because they planted evidence that it was Simon, like his lighter, but Caesar stole his lighter, so it couldn't have been him.
I see.
But Caesar needs to make sure that Joan is dead, so he gets this reporter involved. His name is Johnny. And basically is like, Johnny, there's some kind of strange cover-up going on. You should investigate. So Johnny, Joan, and Simon, Johnny gets into the compound. They end up escaping the pit. One of the children, her name is Sylvia, joins them. And they try to get word out about this government conspiracy, but they are now on the run from the government as the government tries to hide Project Mannequin. So that's the novel.
Huh. So it ends with them on the run.
Well, I don't know how it ends.
Sure, that's fair.
Unfortunately, Ewing didn't give me the ending.
Got it. Okay.
But they were very helpful in their blog post by explaining how the novel is different from the movie.
Uh-huh.
And they actually say that the movie probably does things better. The book itself, it's a sci-fi thriller and focuses very much on that thriller aspect, whereas the movie gives space for some character moments, for example. You can see a lot of influence for this novel from John Wyndham with The Midwich Cuckoos, which you called with Village of the Damned.
Yes.
The novel, The Midwich Cuckoos, came out in 1957. So plenty of time for Lawrence to come up with his own version.
Yeah.
Except instead of like aliens impregnating women, it's irradiated children.
Right.
Village of the Damned came out in 1960, was an A-Picture, was MGM. I forget how well it did, but in any case...
Everybody saw it.
Yeah, everyone saw it. So I feel like that's why Hammer's like, a book that is British and has some stuff in common, especially with themes.
Oh, yeah.
Why don't we adapt it?
Yes.
So I think that's exactly what's going on here. And I won't go into detail here in case it spoils it for the listener and for you. But from what Ewing was saying in their blog post, it sounds like some changes were made to make it even more similar to Village of the Damned. So it'll be interesting.
Interesting. Well, yes, you are entirely right about why Hammer made this. It was to ride that Village of the Damned coattails. I mean, like Village of the Damned, because it's set in England, like it's hard to remember that it's not a Hammer movie, that it's like MGM, right? So I'm sure Hammer was like, yeah, we got to get ourselves, one of those. In telling the story of this movie, honestly, the place to start, though, is with its director.
Okay.
So Joseph Walton Losey III was born in Wisconsin in 1909, where he was high school classmates with Nicholas Ray, who would also go on to be a big deal. Film director, one of my heroes. Losey attended Dartmouth and Harvard, first as a med student before switching to drama. He became a director in the New York political theater scene of the early 1930s, helming controversial titles before traveling to the Soviet Union in 1935 to attend a film seminar taught by Sergei Eisenstein, where he met writer Bertolt Brecht. Returning to the U.S., he directed plays for the WPA, the Roosevelt-era New Deal, workers' projects thing, right? The Make Work projects.
Yeah.
Which later got a reputation for fostering leftist, radicalism.
Surely not this guy, though, right? It was purely academic that he went to Moscow. All of those projects in New York, I'm sure all of those were very chill.
Uh-huh. So Losey served in World War II, and after the war, he worked with Bertolt Brecht in L.A., staging Brecht's play Galileo, starring Charles Laughton in Los Angeles. A play about a genius who is, misunderstood and persecuted in his day.
And yet he's correct.
Yes. Losey divorced his first wife in 1944 after 7 years of marriage. He would go on to marry 3 more times in his life and was often described by friends as a person who made himself deliberately difficult to like, as part of kind of a persona of, I don't know, auteur, I guess. His son from his first marriage, Gavrik, worked as a production manager on a lot of his father's films, and Gavrik had 2 sons who themselves became film directors, and then Losey's son from his third marriage, Joshua, became an actor. In 1947, Losey accompanied Bertolt Brecht to a HUAC meeting that Brecht had been called to as a witness, and Brecht left the U.S. the next day.
Yeah.
Later that year, Losey directed his first feature film, The Boy with the Green Hair, starring Dean Stockwell as a child actor. That's Dean Stockwell from Quantum Leap and Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
The Boy with the Green Hair, if you've never seen it, is a political allegory with a message against war and discrimination. Losey was friends and colleagues with leftists and radicals, and by 1945, the FBI had a file on him accusing him of being a Stalinist agent. Losey joined the Communist Party USA in 1946, which is the exact wrong year to join, by the way. A lot of people who got caught up in the communist witch hunts in the 50s, their defense was usually well, it was 1941 and the Soviets were our allies. I didn't see what was wrong about it. But by 1946, the war's over. You don't have that excuse, right? He said that he joined the Communist Party basically out of a sense of guilt that going to Hollywood had disconnected him from the New York political scene. So he used to be doing all these activist plays, and now he was over in Hollywood getting big bucks for making, movies for RKO. So he felt guilty about, I guess, participating in capitalism. So he joined the Communist Party.
Yeah, no, he's a leftist. The guilt is part of it.
He was under contract to RKO when Howard Hughes bought the studio in 1948 and began purging it of leftists. Apparently, the way that Hughes would figure out you were a leftist at RKO, if you were a director.
Hand you something to sign. If you sign it with your right, you're good.
God, almost.
Oh.
Not exactly. But what he would do is if you were a director at RKO, he would offer you the job of directing this script called I Married a Communist. Which was an anti-communist propaganda film. If you refused to direct it, you were a communist, which Losey refused. So Hughes responded by keeping him on contract but not giving him any work.
Yeah, dick move.
Right. Until finally Hughes was convinced to release Losey from his contract in 1949. After that, he began working as an independent. He directed The Lawless for Paramount in 1950, and he directed the remake of M for Columbia in 1951. HUAC finally subpoenaed Losey, but he avoided being served the subpoena by abandoning work editing The Big Night in order to flee to Europe with his family. He was blacklisted from working in the US, and he eventually settled in the UK, directing films in a wide range of genres, initially under pseudonyms. He had been considered to direct X the Unknown by Hammer back in 1956, but the American star of that picture, Dean Jagger, refused to work with a communist, so Losey was removed. By 1961, the blacklist in America had largely been broken, thanks to Kirk Douglas openly hiring Dalton Trumbo to write Spartacus in 1960. Although Losey was hesitant to accept a job offer from Hammer due to their reputation for deliberately provocative horror films, as Losey put it, his previous picture, The Criminal, had flopped at the box office, so he accepted the job despite objecting to screenplays that feature explicit violence, which is a weird objection given some stuff that's coming later in this story. But that was the idea. He was above directing such gratuitous, kind of things.
Yeah.
But he had to take the job. He had no money. The first draft screenplay was apparently quite true to the book, and it was written by Ben Barsman, a Canadian journalist, screenwriter, and novelist whose wife Norma was a member of the USA Communist Party. So Edward Dmytryk sold them out to HUAC back in the 50s to avoid jail time, and they ended up in exile in England. So you can, I guess, think why Hammer thought Barsman and Losey would be a good match.
Yeah, a good pair. They agree politically.
Barsman had actually written Boy with the Green Hair back in 1948, and in 1961 he scored his own Spartacus with the epic El Cid starring Charlton Heston. So, things are back on the up and up for the commies, basically. But Losey didn't like Barsman's draft.
Yeah, they're both leftists. Sorry.
And so instead, he brought in Evan Jones to rewrite the screenplay. And Jones would remain a regular Losey collaborator through the 1960s, even as Losey began his very fertile creative partnership with writer Harold Pinter. So Evan Jones is kind of famous.
Okay.
He's well known as one of the best screenwriters to come out of Jamaica. So he was born in Jamaica in 1927. His father was from this family that had immigrated from Wales to Jamaica in the 19th century, and they owned one of the biggest banana farms in Jamaica. They owned 10,000 acres of land by Portland, that's Portland, Jamaica. His mother was a Quaker missionary from America who had come to Jamaica. And so despite this, where I say that his father was British, his mother was American, and they owned land and they were Quakers and missionaries, Jones, depending on who you ask, whether Jones is white or not, you get a different answer. So obviously his family intermarried with a lot of people in Jamaica over the course of the century they had been there. When you look at pictures of Jones, he is darker skinned as a younger man, and his skin tone kind of lightens as he ages. So at a certain point in his life, he was able to pass for white, but at other points in his life, he couldn't pass for white. I bring all this up because the fact that his family was British and American, the politics of race were treated very differently in those two countries at the time, right? So, from a British point of view, Jones is white enough, and from an American point of view, he is not.
Yeah.
Anyways, his parents instilled a love of poetry and theater in him as a young child, and coming from a place of privilege from this wealthy political family in Jamaica, he felt that he had a duty to contribute to the world, and the way he was going to do this was by becoming a writer. At 17, he left Jamaica to attend a Quaker college in the U.S., earning athletic and academic success, and he began writing plays while he was in college. After graduation, he worked as a Quaker volunteer doing relief work in Gaza in the aftermath of the First Arab-Israeli War in 1949. He went to Oxford for some more schooling, stowing away to England on a banana boat and getting from London to Oxford with money he won playing poker. In 1952, he graduated from Oxford and wrote his most famous work, the poem Song of the Banana Man, which is written in Jamaican patois, but to English meter. He wanted in his writing to kind of like marry Jamaican and English writing traditions, basically. He came to America to work for the Campbell Soup Company, but upon arrival learned that the company's, they didn't call it this then, but like essentially the company's DEI policy had been rescinded and they would not be hiring any non-whites. After marrying an American in 1956, he moved back to England and decided to like really focus in on his literary career. He began writing teleplays for the BBC, becoming quite successful in doing so. Jones's collaboration with Losey here led to a series of film collaborations between the two of them in the 1960s, and Jones remained a successful screenwriter until the 1980s when he transitioned to becoming a novelist, and he passed away in 2023 at age 95.
Wow, so pretty recent.
Yeah. So he's a pretty big deal, this guy. And he's sort of like, he's done the thing he's most famous for by this point, but like the bulk of what he's going to do in his career is still ahead of him when he comes in to write this movie. Losey passed away in 1984 at age 75, and both these men, Losey and Jones, are highly regarded as some of the most creatively successful in their fields, even if Losey's particularness, I guess you could say, about the jobs that he accepted often kept him out of the mainstream. A lot of his like 1960s films become like ever more experimental, especially once he starts working with Pinter. And by the 70s, his stuff is like very experimental. Like instead of dividing his shooting schedule on a film into like interiors and exteriors, he would divide them into like reality, unreality, and abstract.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool.
So once they had a script they liked, it was time to start casting. MacDonald Carey plays the lead role of Simon Wells. Sort of simplified that last name there.
Yeah, just an average-sized well, not a Simon Large well.
Exactly. And also, I mean, we'll see when we watch the movie, but to the best of my knowledge, Simon Wells has merely divorced his wife, not killed her.
Oh.
So, make the lead character...
From what he says anyway.
Right, sure, exactly.
Divorced in life.
Right. Born in Iowa in 1913, MacDonald Carey continues the grand tradition of an American star heading a Hammer picture. Carey got his start in the 1940s, appearing on stage, radio, and film, and he looked headed for leading man territory, especially after he played the romantic lead in Alfred Hitchcock's Shadow of a Doubt. He served in the Marines during World War II, and that kind of slowed his career's momentum. Like, by the time he got back, people were like, Carey who? Kind of thing. Although his alcoholism was frankly the bigger problem of the two. He played Cesare Borgia in the 1949 flop Bride of Vengeance, and Nick Carraway in the Alan Ladd version of The Great Gatsby. He transitioned into a career basically playing supporting roles in A pictures or occasionally the lead in B pictures, like Losey's 1950 film The Lawless. In the 1950s, he began appearing primarily on television, and after he made this movie in 1965, he took the role of Tom Horton on the soap opera Days of Our Lives.
Oh.
Beginning with the first episode in 1965 and continuing to his death from lung cancer in 1994.
Yeah, so that was his bread and butter.
It is his voice that introduces each episode saying, like sand through the hourglass, so are the days of our lives. That's his main claim to fame.
Wow.
English actress Shirley Ann Field is the romantic lead, Joan. Born in 1936, Field began her career as a pinup model for British magazines and was subsequently scouted for movie roles. Her first sizable part was as Angela, one of the murdered women in Horrors of the Black Museum. She gets killed on the carnival ride towards the end of the movie. And then she appeared as one of the hunted actresses in Peeping Tom. Her breakthrough role, however, was in Tony Richardson's 1960 film The Entertainer, before appearing as the female lead in the tremendously popular social drama Saturday Night and Sunday Morning. She also appeared with Kenneth More in Man in the Moon that same year, so she had like 3 really big hits in 1960. Her career would wind down as the 60s went on, but as of 1961, she was hot stuff. She passed away in 2023 at age 87. Swedish actress Vivica Lindfors plays the sculptress Freya Nielsen, who is, I believe, the love interest of Dr. Bernard.
Yes, invented for the movie.
Though the film's sculptures were created by English artist Elizabeth Frink. As for Dr. Bernard, he is played by Canadian actor Alexander Knox, a veteran of stage and screen who was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Picture for the title role in Wilson, the 1944 biopic of U.S. President Woodrow Wilson. However, Knox's liberal views and political activities hurt his career in the McCarthy era, and so he went to Britain.
Pretty common theme across all these folks.
Yeah. Now, the role of Caesar was renamed in the movie to King.
Yeah.
Which like means roughly the same thing, but sort of, I guess, implies like that these ne'er-do-wells are maybe less like weirdly literate than they are in the novel. Anyway, in the movie, King is like a psychopathic leader of a biker gang. And he is played by our boy, Oliver Reed.
Fantastic.
This was his very next film for Hammer after his breakout in Curse of the Werewolf. After this, Hammer wanted to try breaking out from horror, so they made a pirate movie called Pirates of the Blood River, which Jimmy Sangster wrote, and that's Reed's next movie after this one, playing a pirate.
Ooh, fun. It's not horror though, so we won't have to.
No.
We won't get to watch it for the podcast.
No. The rest of the cast is rounded out by familiar character actors like Walter Gotell, James Villiers, and James Maxwell. Of the various children who appear in the film, there is one, a kid named Richard in the movie, that I'd like to single out because he is played by 14-year-old Nicholas Clay, who would go on to act on stage and screen in a variety of roles for many years, but most notably to me as Lancelot in the best King Arthur movie, Excalibur. So the film was shot from May to June 1961 on location and at Bray Studios, going over budget by about £25,000.
That's not too bad. Like, it's not good.
Mm-hmm. Hammer producer Anthony Hines clashed with Losey once he realized what a radical and anti-establishment film Losey was making. Hines insisted on several changes to the story, which Losey disagreed with. And I can probably talk more about that like after we watch the movie so that it doesn't spoil anything.
No spoilers.
Yeah. Losey's title for the picture was The Brink, by the way, but Hines wanted to associate the picture in the public's minds with Village of the Damned, so it was titled The Damned. The picture was submitted, finished, to the BBFC on December 20th, 1961, and that's why we are watching it now in the podcast. The BBFC gave it an X rating and didn't ask for any cuts.
Oh, wow.
Here's an X rating. Hines, however, did want cuts, about 8 minutes worth of them, to reduce the film's philosophical and political content, among some other changes. Losey refused. So, Hines refused to release the picture. It took nearly a year for Losey to relent and agree to the cuts, which brought the film from 95 to 87 minutes. It was then released in Australia on November 16th, 1962, and did not see release in the UK until May 19th, 1963, as the second feature on a double bill with Hammer's Maniac. The film nevertheless got rave reviews from critics who called out the blatant attempts to bury it. Like, it was very clear to everyone that Hammer was trying to, like, just quietly make this movie go away.
Yeah.
The Times said of the film, Joseph Losey is one of the most intelligent, ambitious, and constantly exciting filmmakers now working in this country, if not indeed the world. The Damned is very much a film to be seen, for at its best it hits with a certainty of aim which is as exciting as it is devastating, and hits perhaps in a place where it is most important we should be hurt.
Interesting.
The film wouldn't be released in the US until June 23rd, 1965.
Whoa.
Retitled These Are the Damned, and cut down further to 77 minutes on a double bill with the Omar Sharif film Genghis Khan. Even in this state, it got good reviews, with the New York Times calling it an unsettling blend of social commentary and science fiction. It would finally be restored to the original director's cut of 95 minutes in 2007. And today, it is recognized as a classic, which increased Losey's standing in the cinema community and enabled him to take greater artistic risks in his later films after this. Like, Losey was always this, like, politically minded guy, but his movies before The Damned, like, are often, you know, because of needing to flee to England, kind of a mix of genres and things, just like what work he could take. And after The Damned, he goes on to these, like, really fruitful creative collaborations that result in, like, the movies he is most creatively respected for coming after this in the 60s and 70s. So I think the main reason why we don't know Children of Light by H.L. Lawrence the way we know Phantom of the Opera by Gaston Leroux is because Hammer tried its best to bury this movie.
Yeah.
We are watching it in terms of the podcast's timeline as if it
came out in 1961.
Yeah, as if it came out when it was done and approved by the BBFC, because we are going to be watching the 95-minute director's cut, which is what's been restored on Blu-ray. The current sort of Blu-ray edition is available from Indicator, either on its own or in a box set with some other Hammer films. And weirdly enough, the Blu-ray lets you watch it either as The Damned or These Are the Damned. And you can either watch the 95-minute director's cut or the 87-minute British cut. And you can choose to watch either of those cuts with either title. But the 1977 US cut, which is what was actually called These Are the Damned, is not on that Blu-ray.
Huh.
Yeah, kind of weird. So yeah, that's this movie, and I'm really looking forward to watching it now, because it's just like, oh, everyone who worked in this movie was super interesting, and critics loved it despite Hammer trying to bury it because they were worried about its, like, political point of view. Like, all of this is super interesting.
It's also interesting to me that they tried to bury it when, like, conspiracy from authority is a theme in the novel.
Right.
And it becomes textual and then meta.
Yeah, absolutely. Exactly.
Wild. Well, folks, hopefully you can find a copy. Hopefully Hammer hasn't completely buried this, you know. You're going to hear a brief musical interlude, and when we come back, we will discuss The Damned, completed in 1961, directed by Joseph Losey.
See you on the other side, everybody.
Hello and welcome back to Scream Scene. We just finished watching The Damned, aka These Are the Damned, from 1961, directed by Joseph Losey. Ben, first thoughts?
I liked this. I think I liked it more as it went on. The first act is a little rough, but I think that also depends on, like, what you're expecting this movie to be going in.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. I think that this movie has a little bit of an editing quirks.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say it's poorly edited, but it's just like strangely edited. Not for any kind of like artistic reason. It's just like not typical.
Mm-hmm.
And I did not like this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I could kind of tell.
But I would agree with your statement as well of I think you need to, I think, go in not expecting this movie to be a particular genre.
So I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but I guess I'll address it now. I don't think this is a horror movie. I think it was certainly marketed as one by Hammer. If you look at like the posters and everything, I think they wanted a horror movie. And I do think it kind of comes back to the Hammer sci-fi tradition a bit of like the Quatermass films and stuff, but those were sci-fi horror. I think what this is just bleak sci-fi in the same vein as like Planet of the Apes is bleak sci-fi.
Yeah.
I actually think this movie probably would have been better if like Rod Serling had written it, like he wrote Planet of the Apes, because it also has like kind of a trying to be a British Twilight Zone kind of feel to it, especially by the end.
Yeah.
But we can like talk more about that after we've gone over the story.
So fairly similar to what I understand the novel to be about. We follow Simon Wells. He's on vacation in the southern coast of England in a place called Weymouth. When the film opens, a 20-year-old woman named Joan lures Simon down a little street, and he gets mugged by her brother's gang. This is the gang run by King, aka Oliver Reed. So Simon is beat up, and he gets brought to a cafe. We have already kind of seen this cafe before he gets brought in, and we meet a man named... so it's spelt like Bernard. So I'm going to end up saying Bernard, even though they kept calling him Barnard.
I think you're just hearing the accent. I think it is Bernard. I think
Okay.
you're just hearing the English accent.
Okay.
Because I interpreted it as Bernard.
Okay, well, they were just like Barnard.
Yeah, I think that's
So
just the accent.
I want to make sure to get people's names right.
Yeah.
Instead of Bernard, it's Barnard, right? Like, okay, anyways, so Bernard is here. He's kind of an older guy, and he's meeting his artist girlfriend, lady friend, Freya, who is here from Paris. She seems to come down to the southern coast for like a few months at a time and then leaves. They have a very like laissez-faire open relationship, it seems. They're getting reacquainted as she's come back in. Simon is brought in. He's pretty beaten up. We learn a little bit more about Barnard because the folks who bring Simon in are a major and a captain. So it's like, okay, so Barnard is part of the military, I guess. Like we are introduced to these people as if we already know them, but we learn like, oh, she's an artist. Oh, he's part of the military. Oh, Simon is on vacation and ran away from his life in America.
You learn about these people as the movie goes, right? It
Yeah.
doesn't start with like, here's what is going on and here's who these people are. You kind of learn about it through dialogue.
Which I know some people will be like, yeah, that's a movie, Sarah. But it's just like this movie, it felt very like plop you in a way that other movies.
I mean, I'll certainly talk more about this later, but this movie's trying to be very literary. I think.
100%. 100%. Felt very much like how a novel would tell the story.
Yeah.
We cut back to Joan. We see that Joan is unhappy with her life as part of this gang. Her brother King is very controlling. Kind of a difference here from the novel is in the novel, they are half siblings. Here, they are full siblings, presumably. King is very controlling of like, no man's going to touch you. It doesn't matter who that man is, like no one. Despite Joan being like 20 years old and her wanting to explore being a grown woman.
Mm-hmm.
So when she sees Simon again at the docks, she decides to go with him, run away from the gang, very much explicitly against King's wishes. King and the gang actually end up chasing them. She jumps onto the boat. They get away. And when she's with Simon, I would argue actually the whole way through, Joan is very manic pixie dream girl to Simon's midlife crisis.
Yeah, I mean, the manic pixie dream girl, like, obviously didn't exist as an archetype in the 60s, but what certainly did exist as an archetype in the 60s, especially in 1960s literature, was like the middle-aged man who's like disenchanted with his life and is now getting to explore all kinds of fun things because of like the 60s cultural revolution and sexual liberation.
Personified by young woman.
Right, exactly. Where there's so many novels from that period that are like well-respected literary novels that are essentially summed up as like middle-aged man sleeps around with young women because he's having a midlife crisis.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what's going on with Simon here.
Yeah, he was an insurance executive. He got divorced. He quit his job. He's out here. He calls it vacationing. It's very clear he ran away from his life in America. His yacht's name is Dolce Vita, which is like, the pleasure of life for the pleasure itself, basically, kind of thing. And Joan, she's like, oh, it must be so nice to just like leave your life and start anew. So she's also wanting kind of a fresh start.
Joan's very like hot and cold throughout this section of the movie, and the best way I can make it make sense in my head is like she's not so much running away with Simon as she is running away from King, and Simon just happens to kind of be here.
I would say that that's textual. I would feel like there was enough done for how I was interpreting it.
Sure.
Anyways.
Yeah.
As Ben's kind of implied here, Simon's a bit too forward, so she's like, no, I don't want to go with you. Take me back to shore. I'll hide out until King calms down. And they go to this clifftop house that is usually empty. They get there, they take out some of the food from the cupboards, and they embrace. She's a bit more warm to this now, and we fade to black. So they've fucked. Meanwhile, so this movie also intercuts in I wouldn't say strange parts of like when we cut back to others, but it just means that a lot of things are happening concurrently.
We kind of have like two sets of characters, which is like Simon and the gang members, and then like Dr. Bernard and the military people and his artist girlfriend. And it takes a long time for those two sets of characters to really meet in terms of like the through line of the plot.
Yeah. But we do get to see of Bernard and the military aspect. So he goes to this military base that is right alongside the coast. And again, that very literary way, we cut from Simon and Joan at the house to a shot overlooking the hills, and we're in the military base room where the folks who teach the children are talking about the children. And you're like, well, what are they talking about? Why are we cutting to this? And who are these people as well? And then Bernard walks in, and things get made a bit more clear. These guys are teachers, but where are the children? Well, Bernard sits down at a desk, TV stuff gets set up, and he gets broadcast to a group of children.
Yeah, he has a little Zoom meeting.
So he talks to 9 children. We get to establish that they are 11 years old. They ask questions that make it clear that they are like down in a bunker, down in these caves, and have no access to the outside world, including like, what will we look like when we are older? And at one point, someone asks, like, you say that, some answers will get in time when the time is right. When is that? And Bernard's like, all things will be given to you in time as you're ready to understand them. A very paternalistic answer. When we cut back to the house with Joan and Simon, they get spooked because they see someone arriving to the house. They think King has caught up with them, but it's actually Freya coming here because this is the seaside house that she stays at when she's here working on her projects and her sculptures.
Yeah, and this house is like right next to the military complex. Like you can see it from the military base. And it's very clear that like the people in town know that Dr. Bernard is a big shot, and they know that Freya's his like girlfriend who he keeps in this house by like his place. They don't really know what Dr. Bernard's like deal is or what the military deal is or anything that's going on there. They just have this impression of like Freya's his like lover who stays at this house. And so all of the like townies call it the birdhouse. Very like
gilded cage kind of deal. So they GTFO as Freya's coming up and head back on the run. Turns out King is actually on their trail. We get an interesting scene with Freya and King. How would you describe that scene, Ben? Am I getting too in the weeds here?
Maybe. So Freya comes home and can tell that like someone's been in her house. Very Goldilocks and the Three Bears. King comes in and wants to know where Simon and Joan are. So he questions her. And the thing about King is that King is not mentally stable. So it kind of goes from like him questioning her to like her trying to put some distance between them and you know, keep him on like his toes, as it were. But it turns out he doesn't really like her art, which are these weird sort of sculptures of birds and other animals that are, you know, quite...
they look kind of like they are decaying.
Yeah, or like burnt or something. And he says he doesn't like them. He kind of has like a little attack of...
a tantrum, you could say.
Yeah, and he destroys one of the statues and like tackles her to the ground and gets very violent with her, but then like immediately becomes super remorseful and starts like crying all over the place. And you really get the sense of his like mental instability, we'll say.
Yeah, doesn't like violence, but clearly resorts to it. And she also says something along the lines of like, he says like, I enjoyed destroying it. And she's like, I don't think you did. So the gang is back on the chase going after Joan and Simon, and they have no choice but to enter into the military compound. And as they are running around, they end up falling down the cliff. We see, though, that they are rescued at the seashore by the children. King is also in pursuit. He falls a little bit later. He gets rescued 20 minutes after Joan and Simon are rescued. Now, these children are cold to the touch, well-spoken, otherwise seemingly normal, except it's strange that they are being locked down here in these caves. And that also they have like no understanding of like what the real world is. They think that, or rather they hope that Joan and Simon are their parents here to rescue them. So things like that. But now our intrepid heroes are trapped down here in the military base as well. So meanwhile, it's like the next day, Bernard and Freya are having a conversation at the house where he confirms like, so 3 people came here that last night. And they have this conversation that's around like secrets. And Freya's very much a believer in like no secrets and is often very frustrated with Bernard's secrets. And like she doesn't even know what he does. And in this conversation, we also learned that Barnard sees that nuclear war is inevitable. That, you know, when it happens, like, we're all going to die. Freya's opinion is like, I mean, it hasn't happened yet, so we have the choice to make a change and to do something about it. For her part, she's going to use the time she has left to make art and do what she loves.
Barnard has a line here where he tells Freya that he can't tell her his secrets because, like, it would put her life in jeopardy.
So, like I said, now Barnard knows that there are 3 adults in with the children. Whenever he interacts with other adults when it comes to the well-being of the children, it's clear that he does have their well-being at heart. He's concerned even about like their mental health and everything, allowing them to have like a hideout in the caves where all the security cameras can't even see. They know about it, and he allows them to have that because that's good for their well-being. But the adults are going to die, so we have to get them out so the children don't have to watch them die.
Yeah, there's like an interesting mix of personalities at the base because it's clear that, like, you know, Dr. Bernard's a civilian scientist who's been like placed in charge of this project. He calls himself a public servant, but he's not like military. He's not General Bernard, right? But then there's this major named Holland who is very military and very much like wants to enforce security and doesn't like that the kids have a hideout where they can't be seen and thinks they need to be like watched constantly and security needs to be tighter. And there's nothing wrong with a person that can't be solved with a good whipping and that sort of thing. And then there are these like teachers who've been hired to teach them. And of course, the military people think the teachers are too liberal and all this kind of stuff.
You turn them into beatniks.
Yeah, exactly.
Is a line.
But I think to your point, I think the fact that Dr. Bernard's like, haven't you ever been a kid? Like, they're going to act out. They're going to like, it's better to let them kind of have these small things to themselves so that it doesn't provoke something bigger. Like it shows that he understands child psychology a little bit, right?
Yeah. It's unclear how much time passes while King, Simon, and Joan are underground, but it's at least like a couple of nights. And the adults are starting to get ill. So Bernard confronts the children over the television screen saying, I know you have 3 adults down there. You need to let them go. You need to bring them to the elevator to take them out. And then the kids rebel. They don't want to. They want to keep the adults here. They see it as they're hoping to escape, honestly.
Yeah. And because Simon, Joan, and King don't understand what's going on at all. They just only know what like the kids have told them, and the kids haven't even told them the whole kind of truth partly because the kids don't know it, and partly because the kids have been raised in this atmosphere of secrecy. And so all that Simon, Joan, and King know is that like there's a bunch of children being like kept in a bunker by the military and not being allowed to leave. Like they don't even really know what sunlight is and stuff, right?
Yeah.
So they've decided to take it upon themselves to like rescue the children, which like seems like a very reasonable thing to do from their point of view. And so that's like galvanized the children to believe that like rescue is upon us, so we can't like give these guys up.
When men in radiation suits and Geiger counters come in to get them, our main characters learn that the children are themselves radioactive. Hence that title, Children of Light.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't seem to stop Simon, Joan. King's a little bit like on the fence. He doesn't like this, but he's like, I just need to get out of here. It doesn't stop them from deciding that, no, the children need to get out of here. So they lead the children out of the caves. One of the exits is right underneath Freya's house in the quarry that's right there. Poor planning, Barnard. What the fuck are you doing? We see these 3 adults coming out. They're leading the 9 children. And then they also get ambushed by the military, all in like radiation suits, trying to get the children, bring them back down into the bunker, all of this. And Freya witnesses this. She had been talking with a member of King's gang because the gang's like, King's gone missing.
Yeah.
Have you seen him? Do you know where my dad is? Kind of vibes.
Also throughout the movie, like, yes, poor planning on Bernard's part, I guess. But also like there's a dude on Bernard's staff whose like job is basically to go down to Freya's house and be like, look at that bird over there. Isn't it interesting? Every time like there's something they don't want her to see.
And so then she also gets to see that this is Bernard's secret work. So like I said, everyone is ambushed and the kids are taken back. Except for King. King manages to run up and he ends up stealing Freya's car. And one of the children, Henry, who's really grown attached to King, tags along. King doesn't want him there. He literally calls the kid, like, you're poison, you're killing me, which is, like, so fucking mean.
Well, I mean, but also true.
But, like, he's 11. He doesn't fucking understand what that means.
Yeah, but King's also like a psychopathic gang leader. He's not a fucking like, you know, a young child like educator specialist.
I get it, but it really hurt my feelings the way he was talking to the kid. I know that that's the point, but like, yeah.
He's the bad guy.
Yeah,
kind
so
of.
he slows down enough to like kick Henry out of the car as these helicopters swarm in to recapture the boy. And as King drives away, he kind of succumbs to radiation sickness and ends up driving off a bridge into the ocean. Bernard is worried about the children, their mental health, their physical health, and also that now they're going to view living in the bunker as if they are prisoners rather than as like
just the normal state of
the
things.
normal state of things. He allows Joan and Simon to go back to Simon's boat. He doesn't really tell them this, but like they're going to die pretty soon from the radiation poisoning, so he allows them to like leave. And then he turns to Freya and he explains a little bit more about where these children came from. You know, their mothers were exposed to radiation by an accident, and so they were born radioactive, but also immune to radiation. And these are the children that will inherit the Earth once the nuclear war has happened. She is very upset about what he's doing, how he's treating these children, and that, like, yes, she was already kind of upset that his belief that the nuclear war is inevitable, but that he would go to such lengths to try to preserve human life after the war instead of just preventing the war. She can't believe, you know, his pessimism in the world, and has this great line of like, you leave them to inherit the ashes of the universe, like fantastic line. But because she knows too much and she refuses to join Bernard's cause, basically, he has to shoot her and kill her. Joan and Simon on the boat. Joan doesn't really want to leave. She wants to go back and save the children. And there's a helicopter that's following them. They have orders to sink the boat once the two occupants are dead. And so it seems like they are overcome with sickness. And as the movie ends, we hear the cries of the children back in the bunker saying, "Help us, free us, please help us," kind of echoing out of the caves across the ocean.
Yeah, it's like overlaid on a shot of like the town from the beginning with like all these sort of unaware people, right? Oblivious people to these cries of these children.
So that's the end. I probably went a bit too much into the weeds there, so apologies to the listeners. Thank you for being patient. The biggest differences between the novel and the film that Mary Ewing, that from that blog post, called out is the addition of Freya. She's completely new. The removal, I guess, or deletion of the reporter character Johnny, which kind of makes sense so that you're not having so many characters, and we get a little bit more screen time with Oliver Reed. And something that Murray Ewing brings out in their blog post is that, you know, it streamlines a bit of the novel, even with the addition of Freya, but ultimately it like gives some more room for characters to interact rather than a thriller move from one thing to the next that seems to be in the novel. So moments for the children to have a little bit more development to them. And does call out that like the book itself is very much a thriller and a good gauge of what your average person in early 1960s Britain might have been worried about, with nuclear weapons, violent youth gangs, and a growing suspicion in the government, which I would argue is like pretty close to like how it's been adapted here. But I think that this movie does something interesting in its adaptation with the addition of Freya, which I will talk about more into the discussion. Is there anything that you want to call out that I might have missed, Ben?
No, I don't think so. I think the thing I would bring up, and especially with what you just said about the adaptation from the novel, is this movie's not super concerned with being a thriller.
Yes.
Now, we watched the 95-minute director's cut, so some of these elements were probably deleted in the shorter cuts, and I'll talk a bit more about that later. But like when I say that this is very literary, like you can tell that both the writer and the director have worked in theater. And what they're mostly interested in is like how these different characters who express different viewpoints clash.
Yeah.
And it's a lot about like the philosophical battle of ideas and that kind of thing. Like Freya certainly brings that out. She's representing the counterculture artist, right? And because her lover is the like establishment scientist, like you really get a lot of that clash between them. Freya, I think, I don't know, having read the novel, but like I think the other big thing that Freya allows you to do in the movie is learn about Dr. Bernard and have him express his point of view on why he's doing what he's doing in a way that in a novel you could all handle that as internal monologue, but you need a character to bring that out, and Freya helps bring that out. One of the things I struggled with this movie, but is related to what I just said, and I can see what they were going for, is I don't think the characters in this movie are really people so much as they are archetypes that are representing and standing in for like the different points of view that the director and the writer want to represent, right?
Yes.
So like Bernard's that like it represents like extreme pragmatism, and Freya represents kind of a free will, not quite like libertarianism, but like a very like laissez-faire kind of freedom sort of viewpoint. Humanism, yeah. Simon is kind of the average guy almost. King is representing like, this fear of violent youth culture. Occasionally, this mapping of the characters onto these things that they represent can be frustrating when you're watching the movie when the characters act in really bizarre ways. For me, this was particularly Joan. I think that the actress does a really good job of like squaring the circle here, but she's very hot and cold. And I think that's because you called out the Manic Pixie Dream Girl thing earlier. Like what she's representing from the POV of the middle-aged men who wrote this movie, I think she represents the confused young woman, just as Simon, represents the man having his midlife crisis. And when I say the confused young woman, I guess the necessary addition is that the writer doesn't understand.
Yeah.
Like she represents like, the middle-aged man point of view of the movie, looking at the young women of the world today and going like, I don't get what your deal is, basically.
You want to have sex, but you don't want to be called a tart?
And like, you want to escape to a new life, but that doesn't necessarily equate with immediately becoming like my wife.
He literally proposes to her
like right after they have sex.
Like it's wild.
It's Simon. So this is a inference that I am making. I think Simon's a World War II vet.
I mean, given his age.
Yeah, given his age. The other thing is like, when they're fighting the guys with radiation suits, like, King grabs a gun and starts shooting people because he's the violent one. But like Simon, middle-aged insurance executive, out of nowhere, like judo flips a guy. And I was like, oh, you were in the Marines. But like, he's one of these guys who's been very much like programmed into that, like, you get a wife, that's your like reward for doing all the hard things. And then she's going to be like kind of your property. And Simon thinks that having an affair will fix his life, right? Like many middle-aged men do. And Joan, doesn't know really what she wants with her life. She knows what she doesn't want, but she doesn't know what she wants. And so she sometimes is flinging herself into Simon's arms and sometimes pushing him away, and he doesn't get it. And it makes her character feel very confused and inconsistent. But I think from the writer's point of view, like, that's the point. This is them saying like, we don't understand women today, basically.
Yeah.
Bernard, Holland, Freya, like they also represent philosophies more than people. I think of the bunch, Freya manages to be the most like a whole person to me. Like she seems the most like a person rather than a point of view.
And that's because they are self-insert.
Sure, yeah.
Like not in a like, oh, I'm going to write myself in and have Spock fall in love with me. But in a like, she's
the artist's point of view.
The artist's point of view, but also specifically the creative optimist of having a perspective against that paternalistic nihilism or pragmatism, as you called it. She specifically is like, well, I'm going to create. This is what I love to do. Like when she is about to get shot by Bernard, he's like, do you know what you saying no means? She's like, yes, I know that it means that you are taking whatever time I have left in this conversation.
She says, you are wasting whatever time I have left, and turns around and goes to work on her sculpture.
And then she gets shot. And it's just like, yeah, the idea of like creation and life and like the joy of doing being the point of this life, no matter how long or short it is, whether it ends in war or not. But also that meaning like this is worth fighting for, to not just like consider it inevitable that war is coming. Like, yeah, it to me, that's why she feels both the most fleshed out, but also the point of the movie.
Right. I think what's interesting about the movie is, you know, and I come to this through like Freya's conflict with Dr. Bernard, and the fact that like Dr. Bernard's the guy like running the facility, and he's the one that like everyone's fighting against, and he shoots Freya at the end, and all of these things like structurally make him out to be like a villain. But this is a movie that's like main thematic moral concern is an examination of kind of the topsy-turvy morality of the Cold War.
Yeah.
Like the things that it drove people to, because the thing is, what Bernard is doing is completely logical from like his point of view. Like he's not coming in here with some wild, crazy, mad scientist thing. Like the way he's going about like his plan is kind of the best way you could imagine it. It makes him and the military monsters, but like if you start from the premise of nuclear war is inevitable, how do we save the human race? And then you go, well, we have to prepare the next generation. And then it's like, hey, here's some kids who are like immune to radiation, but they themselves are radioactive. So, okay, you need to keep these kids alive, but you have to keep them separate from everyone else because they'll make them sick and kill them. And you need to educate these kids to like take on the world that's coming. But you don't want to like immediately traumatize like a 4-year-old by being like, hello, your purpose is to exist to carry on human civilization once the rest of us are all dead. Like, so you need to introduce them to the ideas kind of slowly, which means you need to kind of keep secrets and all of this kind of stuff. Like he has to keep this secret, because if everyone knew about these kids, like one, you'd have other countries coming in to steal them, but also like everyone in Britain would react the way that like Simon and Joan and Freya do, which is like, this is wrong. You need to like let these kids out. But the thing about like Simon and Joan's attempts to rescue the kids is that they were completely doomed from the beginning. There's no world where you can rescue these kids, because it literally kills Simon King and Joan just from being around the kids for like a couple days. The kids cannot exist outside the bunker. They will contaminate everybody. They need to be in the bunker. So like, even though what Bernard is doing is on like an emotional morality level wrong, it is the only kind of like logical, pragmatic like response to kind of the situation he is in and the knowledge he has. So like it creates this very interesting morality where Bernard is not just like a villain. Like he's not breeding the children to be super soldiers to go fight the Soviets. Like he's just trying to like give them the best kind of upbringing that he can under the circumstances. You know, as you pointed out in the plot summary, like he's concerned with their well-being. He understands kind of what everyone is doing and trying to be the best dad he can be to them. So like you compare Bernard with King, who like might be a murderous psychopath, but like even King develops a little bit of a fondness for the kids, and he allies with Simon to rescue them. Like King hates Simon's guts through the whole fucking movie, but when the time comes to like break out and get the kids out of there, Simon's like giving King orders like, hey, go take out that guy and tie this dude up, and King's like, yep, and like goes and does it because this is what needs to happen. And so you have this like really interesting inversion where like King ends up being on like the good guy side, even though he's like totally murderous psychopath. And Bernard's on the side of the bad guys, even though like what he's doing is, from his point of view, like not only pragmatic, but also compassionate. And so it all leads to this like bleak ending. And the ending has the same inevitability that Bernard thinks nuclear war has. Like there's no other way that this story could have turned out given the information we have. And I think that's what, to me, gave it the same feeling as like Planet of the Apes or Dr. Strangelove, where those movies, which are also about nuclear war and a bunch of other things, have these really bleak endings, but they feel inevitable. It's like there's no other way this story could have ended.
Yeah. I also was thinking of Planet of the Apes with the way that it ends. I want to call out some of the other things that this movie is about.
Sure.
I think it has a lot to say about generations and the relationship between them, communication between them, not understanding each other. Like at one point, when Simon has just been like beat up and he's at the cafe, he's like, I didn't expect to see gangs here. And Bernard's like, yes, even senseless violence has made its way here. And the idea of like, yes, senseless violence. When King has that interaction with Freya and he like destroys the sculpture and he's not really sure why, he also leads a very childish life. Like we see them playing, for lack of a better word, like playing on the beach at an arcade. And there's also another time that Freya has this interaction with a member of the gang where he's like, I'm not really sure what I would do, so I'm just looking for King. She's like, well, what do you want to do? It's not what you're currently doing. Like, what do you choose to do? And what do you want to do? And just this like really interesting question about like generations not understanding each other and how they choose to live, and responses to the idea of like how we want to live our life versus how we choose to live our life. The fact that Simon was an insurance CEO and insurance is like, oh, let me put some money, like pay you money in the chance that something bad happens. There's just like a lot of that thematic shit going on.
Totally.
As well as, of course, like they kind of call back to that senseless violence quote. And then we have the major saying like, oh, he just needs a good whipping. That would sort him out. So then like, how is that any less senseless violence or any more senseless violence than them beating up a guy for the money, right?
Oh, totally. I think the gang is very explicitly mirrored by the military characters.
Yeah,
like I think,
yeah.
like the gang's really interesting to me because the way the movie starts, where Bernard's like, yes, even England has, senseless teen violence, makes it initially seem like the movie's going to have a take on the gang that's very similar to like exploitation teen juvenile delinquent movies in the 50s, where it's just like, I don't know, the teens are just psychos, I guess. But then you have that thing between Freya and the gang member that shows a bit of an understanding, because he's like, it's very clear that these guys don't see themselves as having a future, right? Like they don't see themselves as having a future, so might as well just like hang out and have fun and get your kicks in. Basically.
YOLO.
Right? Yeah. Something that I think is interesting is there's a mistake in the movie that I think is very telling about how it depicts the gang. When the military guys kind of like bring Simon in at the start of the movie after he's been beat up, they explain to Bernard that he was attacked by some teddy boys. Do you know what teddy boys are?
No.
They are not what this gang is. Teddy boys was like a trend among young middle class British men in like the 50s and 60s for like foppish fashion, like Edwardian. Like think of like how Austin Powers dresses, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, he's got like the ruffs and stuff, like he's from the Regency era, right?
Yeah, they're dressed as biker gangs here.
Right. So Teddy Boys came about because after World War II, a bunch of tailors, when like rationing stopped in Britain, they were like, oh, we can afford to do like plush expensive fashions again. Let's like do like really ostentatious stuff to like celebrate that. We'll bring back all these Edwardian fashions and we'll sell them to rich people. And rich people didn't like them and didn't buy them. And so the tailors ended up with all of this like Edwardian fashion they couldn't sell. So they dumped the prices down to nothing. So then all these like lower class, like industrial working men, teens bought them because they were cheap. And then they were like, this is the style now. And despite the foppishness, like Teddy Boys did have a bit of a reputation for like riots and violence and stuff. But yes, the gang in this movie is dressed like they're from the Marlon Brando movie, The Wild Ones. They wear black leather jackets. They have like hats with like brims that look very like military kind of fashion, like Tom of Finland kind of shit. And they seem very Americanized. They're very like an American gang of teen bikers rather than these teddy boys that they're claimed to be in dialogue. That makes me feel that the way they are dressed in these kind of like sort of fascisty military kind of styles means that the mirroring of them with the military characters is very deliberate.
So I just Googled teddy boys to see some of these styles, and I'm seeing a lot of like dress coats and stuff. So the way that King dresses is pretty much exactly the same as the rest of the gang, except he wears a suit jacket.
Yes, he wears a blazer, yeah.
Yeah, so, blazer, not suit jacket. I don't want the dye workwear guy to come after me for like not knowing things.
It's only a suit jacket if it's part of a suit.
It might have been part of the suit. He might just not be wearing the pants. Anyways, so I can see maybe like them tying teddy boys as like a very British subculture, like the quick brief like overview that Google gave me where it says that it's a mainly British youth subculture.
Yeah.
And without the global influence of the internet, it would probably stay as a British subculture.
Speaking of the black leather jackets they all wear, this movie's soundtrack tries to come up with like teen rock anthem that the gang is into, and it's the worst. And it's like the only thing, it's like the only piece of music for like the first act of the movie.
Yeah.
And it's super repetitive and awful, which I'm sure from like the middle-aged people writing it was kind of the point. Like that's what rock music sounds like to them. But I'm like, this would never play on the radio in Britain, specifically because it has lyrics that are like, black leather, kill, kill, kill. Like, it's just like, go out
That's like smash, smash, smash.
No, I think they do say smash, 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 but kill, kill, kill is also in there. And I'm just like, this would never fly.
Wow.
Anyways.
I didn't like this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Started off the second half by declaring that. And I still don't like this movie. And I want to be clear that that doesn't necessarily mean that I think you should avoid this movie. I think you can dislike art. I think one of the reasons why I didn't like this movie is that it made me very upset because they're talking about nuclear war. And in my mind, I'm thinking of the climate crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally.
And I mean, like, nuclear war, yes, still a current threat, especially like as tensions rise politically worldwide. But the climate crisis is front of mind. And the idea of like, well, there's no point for me as a 20-year-old in a gang. I have no future because your generation fucked the planet. So I'm just going to play games and buy whatever I want. Get really into Labubu's.
Yeah, it's all still really relevant, right?
Yeah, and then you have the like paternalistic like, well, you really just need to like sort out your life, kid. You need to get a dinner table and get married and like have a front sitting room, and that will make your life completely better without like thinking about, you know, the global impacts of living this way. And yeah, just a lot of feelings and just a lot of like struggling with that. And it's also why Freya, I think, kind of is like the shining star character in this movie as the figure of like creative optimism And so then when she is killed at the end, it's part of that bleak feeling, and it just like really hammers it home. And to me, that's what makes this able to be considered horror. I'm with you. I'm not like, I don't know, but I would see that level of bleakness. It reminded me of Phantom Carriage, of just like make you feel super shitty. Isn't this a shitty time? It's like, what are we doing here? Kind of a feeling of like, what are we doing in the midst of all of this chaos, and feeling like, okay, I guess I have to choose between creative optimism, pragmatic nihilism, like all these things. Yeah. Don't worry. I'm just the confused young woman.
I understand why you're upset, and I can understand why that would make you feel negatively towards the movie because it made you upset. But like, I'm going to counter with the fact that I think that's how the movie wants you to feel.
Yeah, no,
like,
for sure.
Like the movie's bringing all this stuff up on purpose, and it like wants to be bleak, and it wants you to like understand like these problems. And I think because you are already aware and sensitive to these problems, it like makes you very upset. But like, I think its goal, its aim is to try and bring these problems to the attention of like people who would attend a Hammer horror screening and be like, hey, fucking look out your window, my guy.
No, totally. Yeah, I like art media. It's supposed to make you feel something, and so I think it's successfully achieving that. I don't like this movie, but like I recognize that it's successful at what it's doing. I recognize that the people working on it are doing a very good job. It's just not a movie for me.
Yeah, I think there's always this thing you hear it from like stories of Hollywood producers all the time, which is like, oh, this should have a happy ending because we want the audience to go out feeling good about the movie. Because if they go out feeling bad, they're going to tell people not to go see this movie. And like this thing that like, oh, you should never bum out the audience, basically. And this movie bums out the audience, but like that's the point.
Yeah.
I think that part of the way that like Dr. Strangelove and Planet of the Apes get away with it is they have humor.
Sure.
This is like a really humorless movie.
Strangelove is 3 years from now, and Planet of the Apes is 7 years from now.
Oh yeah. And certainly by those times, some of what Losey's talking about has like more entered the mainstream of thought. But like, in addition to having like humor, Planet of the Apes also has like its bizarre, it's doing the Star Trek thing. It's like, I'm dressing this up in a really bizarre premise so that that's what you remember of the movie, right? Personally, I don't know if I like this movie or not. I brought up earlier that like I think it gets better as it goes. I think that what I see here are a lot of like literary pretensions, and this movie is written like a activist stage play or something.
Yeah,
like it really has that you can really see Losey's background in like the New York activist theater scene, basically, right? I think that these literary pretensions work against it because it ends up making the characters into straw men. I think its biggest weakness is that it takes quite a while to get to the point. Like it takes quite a while to get to the kids.
Yeah.
And I think the reason that it takes quite a while to get to the kids is it has this character setup of King and Joan and Simon. And really, like, if you were to look at this very, like Bernard, very pragmatically, King is just a plot device to drive Joan and Simon to have to hide in the caves. And if this was like a regular B movie, like that's kind of what it would be. Like, you would get there a lot faster. But I can't fault Losey and Jones for wanting to add a bit more to this B movie premise they were handed. So like the reason why all that takes so long is because the movie's like, we want you to understand Simon's background. We want you to understand Joan's psychology. We want you to understand where King is coming from. And so you get all these like kitchen sink drama style, like
Scenes.
Input into who these people are and why they act the way they act, which means that like it's 40 minutes before you kind of get to the kids, right? And once you get to the kids, I think the movie really picks up. Like that's kind of much more what the movie is. In terms of the whether this is horror thing, you brought up the bleak ending. I think this is more like Incredible Shrinking Man.
Yeah.
Where like I was trying to argue that was horror because of the bleak ending, but we ended up saying no, it's not. I think it's more Incredible Shrinking Man than Village of the Damned, really. It's much more like just a straight science fiction story with a super bleak ending.
Even Village of the Damned, like we had a discussion and I was on the side of it not being horror, and it being much more sci-fi. Yeah, for me, like I think it's because of how much that bleak ending really hit home, and thinking about the audience member in 1961, or I guess like 63 or 65.
Yeah, whenever they actually got to see this, yeah.
That is, nuclear war is a very real threat. If folks want to learn a bit more about like the Cold War and stuff like that, we talk a bit about it in our episode on Gojira, episode 172, as well as our episode on Them, which was a horror adjacent number 21 episode. But the Cuban Missile Crisis is 1962. So we haven't even hit that point. But by the time that people are seeing this movie, they would have experienced that.
Yeah.
And I think that feeling of like, I think I need to be pragmatic about this existential fear, because like, what kind of control do I, average Joe on the street, have? I think that is a coping mechanism and a means to live. And I think that this movie really would have hit home for someone like reflecting on what does being a pragmatic nihilist actually mean.
Yeah, it's a movie that basically says the only sane way to respond to the insanity of the Cold War are actions that in a sane world would seem insane.
Yeah.
If you follow me. I think all the stuff you're talking about, I think makes it very clear like why Hammer buried this movie.
100%.
Is like, this is a downer. Like, I can really see why Hammer and Losey clashed. You can see the movie Hammer wanted to make kind of in here occasionally. It's certainly the one they marketed it as. And when you look at the marketing is, this is a creepy children horror movie. Like, the kids have like glowing eyes and stuff on the poster. But Losey wanted to say something. And on the whole, I think he succeeded. But you can also see how this went over budget. We have 2 helicopters and like a fleet of motorcycles, and we're shooting on location at Weymouth, and we've got all these children always raise your budget. And then also look at how good the movie looks. Like, this is well shot. I kept looking at this movie being like, I don't know if I enjoy this, but it's certainly well made.
Yeah, a lot of really well done and well integrated special effects shots with
like,
matting.
Yeah, the mats are incredible. I don't have time to go into mat history and technology, but like, these are so good that they look like the sodium vapor process to me. I don't even know if the sodium vapor process had existed by then, but that was like a secret process that Disney had for doing perfect mats in the 60s. They used it on Mary Poppins, which I don't know is out yet. If you want to learn more about it, there are videos talking about it on YouTube. The reason why I say this is like, when Joan and Simon are on the boat, there is shots of her, and it's clearly mats, not rear projection. And her hair is like blowing around and it's super messy, and like, it's perfect. Like, they've got a perfect mat on every strand of her hair. I was super impressed. Also, I don't know if we've mentioned it, but this movie's shot in black and white for that added sci-fi grit of that Twilight Zone kind of Quatermass feeling.
Yeah.
I kept being reminded of those early Val Guest Quatermass films watching this. I think in like another universe, maybe not the original TV version of Quatermass, but like the Brian Donlevy movie version of Quatermass could be Dr. Bernard in this story. That kind of dedication to like, we have to do what must be done kind of thing.
Yeah.
The cinematographer for this movie, Arthur Grant, also shot Abominable Snowman, Curse of the Werewolf, and Shadow of the Cat. So we've seen his work before. I talked a little bit in the intro about like the disagreements between Losey and Hammer. Now that we've watched the movie, I will say those disagreements included Hammer wanted to tone down the incestuous implications between Joan and King.
Sure,
Because-
I can understand that.
Yeah, the movie's implication is that, like, King is in love with his sister, can't have her because that's wrong, therefore has never been with anyone, which is something that does come up in the movie, and therefore won't let anyone be with Joan, right? That's kind of the psychology at play there. And I guess at one point in development, it was a little more clear what was going on, and they wanted him to pull that back. The cut that I talked about, where like the movie got delayed because Losey refused to cut some stuff, there's like when they're beating up Simon, when they mug him at the start of the movie, like King like beats Simon with his umbrella, and Hammer wanted the shots of that cut out. The change that Hammer did successfully force on Losey that he objected to the most was Bernard killing Freya.
Sure.
Losey wanted Freya to be killed by the helicopters
Okay.
rather than Bernard himself. He felt that like Bernard as a character kind of keeps his own conscience about what he's doing clear by kind of passing all the dirty work off to other people. Like the military killed you, not me.
Yeah.
Right? But Hammer wanted Bernard to kill Freya because they wanted to have it be clear to the audience that Bernard was the villain. They wanted Bernard to be like very clearly delineated as a villain, which I think Losey didn't want. Like Losey wanted that ambiguity where it's like he's doing bad things for a good reason.
I like it because it shows it's like a turning point for him as a character, right? He has a little bit of an arc towards being the villain that he doesn't want to be.
Yeah, he has to make the choice to kind of commit to doing what needs to be done.
Yeah, this movie is completely about choice. Yeah, sorry, I'll let you continue.
No, I agree. I think it works either way, but I see what you're saying. We haven't really talked about the cast that much.
I think everyone's good.
Yeah, I think it's quite good. Even if some of them are asked to flip personalities on a dime sometimes. I think Shirley Ann Field, who plays Joan, does her best to portray Joan as this confused and scared woman, right? And kind of, you can see in her acting the way she's trying to connect the dots between like saying to Simon, like essentially like, fuck off, I don't want to be near you. And then going to hug him and kiss him in like the next moment, right? Like she's doing her best to make that make sense. I think Oliver Reed adds a lot to King. I don't know how much is like on the page versus what he brought as an actor, but I think Reed really shows King's like self-loathing. Like the sense you get from Reed is that King hates himself and takes that out on everyone else.
Yes. Yeah, I would agree.
You know, he commits violence and then like immediately regrets it and feels bad and starts crying and stuff like that. I think the child actors assert themselves well, particularly Rachel Clay, who plays Victoria, who's kind of the lead kid. Hammer probably didn't like that the kids look completely normal here because they looked like the Midwich Cuckoos in the book, right? You were saying?
Yeah, blonde.
Yeah.
Also, the idea that they are cold isn't in the novel. Apparently, there's just like a line of the children commenting on the adult being warm.
Oh, sure.
But that could just be they've never met an adult before, so are they warm like us? It could also be about like emotional warmth and something about that because they only see them through TV. But there's nothing in the novel about them being like strangely cold.
Yeah. Ultimately, I think the choice to have the kids look normal was the right choice for the movie.
Yeah, I would agree.
At least this version of the movie where we're meant to feel bad for the kids, right?
Yeah, they could be your kid.
I think my favorite actress in the cast is Vivica Lindfors, who plays Freya.
Yes. So she's a little bit older. She like you can see she has wrinkles. We aren't really given ages except for Joan.
She's older than Joan, but younger than Bernard.
And I really appreciated that it was an older woman. This woman who presumably lives outside of that typical structure of like, I got married and I had children, or at the very least, that's not her current life, incarnation of her life. I really appreciated seeing that, especially because this movie is about choices. And I felt frustrated at, when thinking about the movie, that we don't get a scene between her and Joan.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be really interesting, right? To like have this older maternal figure who can talk to Joan about like the confusion she's feeling in her life. I think the reason that doesn't happen is that the movie was written by men, and they mostly are thinking of the women in this movie as counterpoints to the stories of the men in this movie.
Yes.
But yeah, like it's clear that Bernard is older than Freya. Like you almost get the sense that like once upon a time, Freya was Bernard's middle-aged, midlife crisis 20-something-year-old, and now like Freya's 40 and he's 60 kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's an interesting almost like mirror to Simon and Joan. The one big difference from the book that we did mention in the intro, but I'll mention again here, is that like Simon's not a murderer.
Yeah.
Which is clearly was done to make Simon more likable because he's our POV protagonist character. But Simon is not likable.
Well, it also allows there to be a feeling of like, oh, we're on the same side when he meets Freya and Bernard. Like, if he was on the run for being a murderer, he wouldn't want to be picked up by the military police.
Oh, yeah. I think also it makes it harder to think that like they're trying their best to make the Simon and Joan thing believable, but still frame it in a way where you would rather Joan be with Simon than with King. And if it's like, well, I ran away from my possessive psycho boyfriend to your boat, Simon. Why are you here? And he's like, well, I just murdered my wife. It's like, I don't think I'm safe here. So, I mean, it was a good choice to make, but like Simon is Don Draper if Don Draper was not as handsome as John Hamm. So, like...
So he's Pete.
He's a little problematic is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think that's all I really have to say about this movie. I think it's, to be clear, I think it's good. I think it's a good movie. I don't know how much I liked it. I think the first act could have moved faster.
I agree.
Which means that maybe I'm on Hammer's side. Like maybe I would like the 87-minute version more. Like who knows? Maybe when I was young and I was a young filmmaker, I was very like the director's vision, the director's cut. Like director's always right. Go with like the artist intent, author intent, and like. As I'm getting older, I find myself like occasionally agreeing with the producers more and more, which is very like live long enough to see yourself become the villain coded.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't think this goes on the list. I think this goes on miscellaneous.
I am inclined to agree. The thing that makes me go, well, maybe it's horror because it would have been in that realm of horror movie and horrific for the people of the time.
I think the thing is like I come back to thinking about Incredible Shrinking Man a lot, and the fact that like there's a lot of sci-fi that's meant to like make you feel bad about the world around you that doesn't make the sci-fi horror. I always think about like, are the filmmakers trying to scare you? And I don't think they're trying to scare you here. They're trying to make you think, but also I don't think this is like a movie trying to scare you in the moment.
Yeah, I would agree.
I don't think it's trying to make you afraid in the moment. If there's a kind of fear that the movie's instilling upon the audience, it's more of like dread.
Yeah.
This is a movie about like dreading what's coming.
And I think that explains my reaction to the movie and my feelings after the movie as well. Like I said, it really reminded me of Phantom Carriage and that feeling of like, I mean, that movie is very like dread and this fucking sucks over and over and over again. But when I looked at other movies on the list, I was like, this doesn't really feel right. The other movies that I thought of besides Phantom Carriage were Planet of the Apes and Strangelove.
Yeah.
both of which are not horror.
Right. And like, I think of all the Planet of the Apes sequels because like because the secret to the original Planet of the Apes series, dear listener, if you've never seen it, if you only know the like Andy Serkis ones, which are very different in tone, the original Planet of the Apes sequels, the trick to them is no matter how campy or funny or enjoyable they get, every one of them has a bleak as fuck ending.
Yeah.
Like the most sitcom-y one, which is the third one, ends with literally all of the characters dying and being shot and killed.
Not all.
Okay. Spoiler alert. The baby they try to kill lives. That's it.
But that's...
So that he can
I bring that up because that's the point.
Yes.
Like, he needs to live so that there can be a fourth one.
Yeah, exactly. But like the fourth one ends with like the apes turning against the humans and like killing everybody. Like those movies, like the second movie ends with them blowing up the entire planet.
Yes.
Like it's all of those movies have immensely bleak endings, and that's what I was thinking of a lot with this movie.
Yeah. All right. Well, if we're not going to rank it, then folks, if you want to see what movies have ranked, what other movies are on the miscellaneous part of the list, you can go to our website, screamscenepodcast.com, and you can find the full list there. That's also where you can find our appeals box if you would like to contest our not ranking of this movie. If you want to share even like your thoughts about These Are the Damned. Are we the damned?
I think the children are the damned. I think that was the implication I got.
Well, but like we're the ones who are damned to die in the nuclear annihilation.
That's fair.
You know, I think there's questions here.
I think maybe all of the characters are the these in These Are the Damned.
Yes.
Given that they either are trapped, morally reprehensible, or were killed.
Yes. Yeah. You can drop those thoughts off at our Ask box on Tumblr, or you can email us at screamscenepodcast@gmail.com or talk to us on Blue Sky.
Scream Scene updates every other Wednesday on SoundCloud, iTunes, YouTube podcasts, Spotify, and many other podcasting apps if you subscribe to our RSS feed, which ensures that you will never miss an episode. If you'd like to support the show, the biggest way is to just like tell people about it. Word of mouth is kind of the best way for podcasts to build an audience. If you share the show on social media, I really appreciate that. Or
I also appreciate it, for the record.
Yeah. Or if you really want to show us how much you enjoy the show, you can head over to our Patreon at patreon.com/screamscenepodcast. There you will find bonus audio, film reviews, short stories, music, all kinds of cool little bonus things we've done in the past. And we really appreciate your support over on patreon.com/screamscenepodcast.
So, Ben, what are we watching next week?
Next week, Sarah, we are diving into the filmography of Larry Buchanan, a legendary schlockmeister in his own words. And we are watching his ersatz sexploitation horror movie, The Naked Witch.
Okay.
So,
intriguing.
A movie that was shot in 1961, but apparently not released until 1964.
Seems to be a theme.
We will see you then, creatures of the night.
Bye.
Bye.